Hello, BookTube. It's something called Tag Tuesday. How could I have been doing this all this time without knowing there was a thing called Tag Tuesday? Today is Tag Tuesday. So I went looking for a tag and I found one that's as old as the hills, but that somehow I've never done, and it's perfect for me. So it's uh it's the reading habits tag, which was created by the Book Jazz about 50 years ago. And it's all kinds of nosy, intrusive questions about your reading habits. So expect that I will tag a lot of you. Question number one: do you have a certain place at home for reading? I have two. My preferred one, and the one where I do 95% of my reading, is what you're looking at right now, uh, propped up in pillows in bed. Uh, the other spot is the bathroom, and that's because I don't want to frighten you young kids, but once you get to a certain point, it takes a while for the train to pull into the station. And you're just going to be staring at porcelain if you don't have a book. But otherwise, nowhere else. Uh, Question number two: bookmark or random piece of paper. Notice, I don't mean to rant. I'll try to keep it to a minimum. But you'll notice in the course of this tag how many of these questions are completely invalidated if you read ebooks. But deferring to all you old folks, I would like a bookmark, preferably one with a little tassel. But if exigent circumstances, I will use anything, including, as I think I've mentioned on the channel a couple of times before, disastrously, I sometimes use money. Because if you look at a piece of U.S. currency, it's the exact right shape for a bookmark. God only knows how much money is in these books. I have no idea. Question number three: can you just stop reading, or do you have to stop at a certain point? I would be willing to bet that most of you who would answer this question by saying you just can't stop reading it just anywhere. It has to be the end of a chapter, or the end of a scene, or something like that. I myself don't care. I can stop anywhere. Uh, Question number four: do you eat or drink while reading? No, I don't. I concentrate completely on what I'm reading while I'm reading it. The only exception, well, I'm talking about books here, the only exception is periodicals. A couple of times a week, I go to a hole in the wall Chinese food restaurant to read periodicals because otherwise, as some of you may know, they pile up like the snows of yesteryear, and I don't want that. So, I don't want to just glance through them while I'm distracted by other things. So I bring them to this restaurant where I've been going for a million years, and I sit in the corner at my table and I read periodicals while I eat my food. But otherwise, books certainly not. Absolutely not. Question number five: multitasking, music or TV while reading. Notice a trend here? Neither music nor TV. I, of course, don't have TV on. I don't even have a TV, but I don't have music on either. And a lot of people answer questions like this by saying, well, it can't have words in it, but I'm perfectly happy to listen to instrumental music. As if with instrumental music on, your brain was not partly working to hear instrumental music, to do something with it. Because it's not random noise like a jackhammer out on the street, which your brain does very little with. It's actually composed to be done to. In other words, pretty as it is, it's a distraction. Now, that might sound arid to you, and that's okay. But perfectly willing to listen to your Debussy while you are reading. But if you do that, don't complain about how little you get done reading wise. Part of why I get so much reading done is because when I'm reading, I do nothing else. Uh, Here, let's move on, shall we? Question number six: one book at a time or several? It is, of course, not possible to read several books at a time. What the question is asking is, do you bounce from one book to the other? And the reason why you would is boredom, an inability to clamp down and concentrate on something. You just, I'm not in the mood. I'm not in the mood for this. I'll go to this. I'm not in the mood for that. I'll go to this. I don't do that either. I take a book, I do nothing but read it, and I grapple with it until I'm done with it. And then I move on to the next book. So I'm not constantly bouncing between books, except the one exception being the book in the bathroom. And even then, I've noticed in the last couple of years that even then, when I'm preparing to go for a visit, I will bring with me the book that I am currently reading, even though I have prepared a book there. I've noticed that I will still sometimes do that, a lot of times do that, just bring the book with me, uh, my current book with me. Question number 7, reading at home or everywhere? Well, I read at home, but I also read everywhere. I mean, when I'm out and about, my time outside the apartment is split 3 ways. One, I'm taking the subway to the Christian Science Monitor, and 2, I'm taking the subway to meet muscular teenagers and walk around and talk and joke and whatnot. And 3, I'm taking the subway to do errands without muscular teenagers by myself. So all 3 of those require reading on the subway. And then the Christian Science Monitor requires nothing else, and the time with the boys requires nothing else. But when it's a day where I'm spending it all by myself, I'm on the subway, that also involves time waiting for subway. So yeah, definitely bring a book in all cases, absolutely. Although, again, not a printed book. What would be the point of that? Especially when I know I'm going to be accumulating them anyway. What would be the point of bringing a printed book when I have 200 on my phone? There would be no point at all. The thing I do is not agonize over which book to cram into my bag the night before, but instead make sure my phone is charged the night before. And then it's the same amount of advanced planning, but it gets me 200 books instead of one that might be poorly chosen or that I might lose. Question number 8, reading out loud or silently in your head? I don't read out loud except poetry. But the silently in your head is more complicated than it sounds. This is a problem that afflicts a lot of you, I would bet. In my life, I have known a lot of people who wanted to read faster, and invariably, when I start to quiz them about how they actually read, they have a bad habit, the same bad habit. They all have it, and it's tricky to get rid of. But you absolutely have to if you want to read really fast. If you're comfortable where you are, that's fine. But the habit I'm talking about is vocalizing. And by that I mean not saying the words out loud, but saying them in your head. If that makes any sense. I've gone through this with a couple of you before in the distant past. If you're reading the words on the page and you're saying them in your mind, then you're reading them only as fast as you can read them with your mouth, with actually breathing, with actually saying them out loud. Whereas you are capable of reading in a non-vocalized way. You don't need to vocalize those words. Seeing them is a separate function than making them. And you don't have to say them, even silently, to read them. And you shouldn't. Well, you shouldn't. You can if you want to. But reading silently without vocalizing the words will triple your reading speed. I don't know how. It has, in my life, it has always served to explain why otherwise really smart and really avid readers weren't getting as much reading done as I would expect. In all cases, that's what they were doing. They were vocalizing. So my advice, just for fun, is to see whether or not you do it, and then see whether or not you can stop yourself from doing it. It's just a mental muscle. It's just a trick to stop yourself from doing it, and it might be worth a try. Let's see here. Question number 9. Do you read ahead or skip pages? I don't skip ahead, and I don't read ahead. I read too fast for that. So what would the reason be? A couple of instances of this tag that I've seen, the reason has been that the book is disappointing you, but you still want to know how it ends. I guess that makes a kind of sense, but I don't ever want to know how much a book ends, how a book ends that bad if it's disappointing me, so I just let it go. But I usually don't let it go. I'm plowing ahead so fast anyway that I don't usually do that. Question number 10, breaking the spine or keeping it like new? Notice again, this question means nothing if you have an ebook. If you're sensible enough to have ebooks, then you don't care anymore. It's nothing to worry about. You're not doing this with a book. You're not worried that you're going to sit on it, or that the spine is going to crack, or that the pages are going to tuft out. All the horrible inconveniences of printed books that I have been dealing with forever, that ebooks completely solve. Not even trying. That's not even a selling point when ebooks first started. No one ever thought to say that, but it's true. You don't have to worry about anything like that with an ebook. But if we're sticking to printed books, I do try to be careful. That's one of the reasons that I prefer uh, classic paperback bindings like Penguin Classics because they're so floppy. It's very difficult to break the spine on a classically bound Penguin Classic. The ones that are printed on the cheap in America, sometimes not, but otherwise, no. Uh, and hardcovers also tend to be a little bit sturdier, especially if they have sewn bindings, so you don't have to worry about it so much. But even so, even if it's a fairly delicate trade paperback, I try to be careful. I do. I don't always succeed. I'm pretty rough on my stuff. uh, and question number 11, do you write in your books? I do, all the time. All books, everywhere. Library books, borrowed books from friends, galleys, finished books, everything. And I can't stop. I've tried many times. I am fully engaged in a dialogue with the book when I'm reading it. So if the book says something willful or stupid or obscurantist, then in the margin I will often blurt out willful, stupid, obscurantist. I don't seem to be able to stop myself. I have in the past tried, and when I don't annotate while I'm reading, I stop being able to really pay attention to what I'm reading and just start obsessing about the annotations. So it's probably not healthy. But once again, it's much easier to do on an ebook. It's true that no one else sees it on an ebook, but annotations on an ebook can be infinite. You could write a novel in the annotation space, and the device doesn't care. And you can call them up easily. You can look for one word in your own annotation, and it will find it. And you can also send it to yourself, save it, mix it up. You can do all sorts of things with the annotations on an ebook that you can't do in physical book. How many hours have I lost in my life going through books, just sort of speed thumbing through them, trying to find the annotation that I want? Oh my. But anyway, that is the reading habits tag, and question 11 is, who do you tag? And since this is one of those nosy questions where I want to know the answers, I want to know everybody's answers, I really tag all of it. I made a long list, but it could be anybody. There are a couple of new channels, Alex from The Reading Puppet and The Reading Squid. I'll leave links to them below, but I want your answers to both these, definitely. Insert literary pun here. Joe at Retired Book Geek, Elisa at Paperbooks, Paper Bits, Britta, Jess at Garden Scriptorium, Chris Rhodes. I would love to hear your answers to this. The Janet Reading with Pugs, Sue's Book Nook, and even Adam. Memento Mori. Surely he must do some of these things. And everybody else. This is one of those things, like the book buying tag, that I want to know the answers to all of these things. These are the kinds of questions that I would ask you if I met you in person. So feel free, fire away, and I'll try never to let another Tag Tuesday go without a tag. Thank you, BookTube.